Hi guys, welcome. We're ready for another Facebook Live series today on planning a Texas Hill Country wedding. This is going to be the cake edition. We are just waiting for our co-host to jump on. Make sure to comment live if you're watching live and comment #replay if you're watching later. Thank you so much for taking the time out to watch these and follow us. So please make sure to hit follow if you're not. All of these comments, tags, all of that stuff makes us stay relevant. So we appreciate that. And like I said, we're just waiting for our co-host. So welcome to Wednesday. Next week edition is going to be about catering and bars. So if there's anything that you would like to hear me talk about, please comment, send us a message, whatever. Just let us know if there's something you want to learn about. And again, we're just waiting for our co-host. I just sent our co-host a invitation to join our live. Hi,
Hi. Hi, Sheree.
good. How are
How are
you?
you doing?
You good, having a good Friday? Or Wednesday? It's Wednesday.
It's
What do I mean Friday?
Thursday. Yes, it's closer to
I
weekends.
know.
Even though our weekends get crazy, so it's good.
Well, thanks for joining. Thanks everybody for joining. My name is Cherie. I'm with Messina Inn in Wimberley, Texas. I've been in the hospitality industry for over 10 years. We are doing a Facebook Live series over planning a Texas Hill Country wedding. We've already done selecting your venue and DJ and planners and photography. So guys, go back and watch that stuff. It's going to be really helpful for you. Today we have Rada with Sugar Shaker Bakery and in Cedar Park joining us to give us advice when it comes to cake. So welcome, Rada, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, Sugar Shaker Bakery has been in business for a long time. We do have a lot of questions that are asked every time when we have tasting. We would love to answer any questions that are helping out our new brides to decide on the size, flavors, design for the cake, and of course to hit the budget. Other than that, I'm very happy that I'm here and that I can share a little bit of what we do and how we do things here at the Sugar Shaker Bakery in Cedar Park.
Thank you. Thank you. For those of you who are tracking budget, so the average wedding in Texas is going to be $30,000 for a wedding, and for cake, we have budgeted $600. The average bakery charges $6 to $7 per person, so you can easily feed 100 people for that. That is one difference that is going to be from those of you who have never ordered from a bakery. They usually charge per person instead of just buy the whole cake. So just something to keep in mind and not let it throw you off. But so let's dive into cakes.
Yes.
So I
Let's go
think
ahead.
my favorite cakes, taste-wise, is going to be buttercream. I mean, you can't go wrong with it, right? Plus, there's the beauty, but there's also the beauty of fondant, right? There's just some things that you can't do with buttercream that you can with fondant, and so some of that might depend on the client's specific budget or design, but you want to tell us a little bit about fondant versus buttercream?
Yes, well, when it comes to the design, we really try to figure out with every bride that is here with us at the tasting appointment if they're very specific about the design they're bringing to us. So, of course, there are several inspiration pictures that would come with them, and we're trying to determine if it's a fondant cake, is it that something that you specifically want to have on the cake, because fondant cakes look more neat. They tend to stay longer outside than buttercream cake. It really depends on where you're having your wedding. Is it indoor, outdoor, or just indoor? Then it really doesn't matter because our buttercream cakes will hold well indoor for more than 2-3 hours, definitely. So it's really the budget and the inspiration. How much is it important to our brides, the design of the cake, and then we go from there.
Yeah. So we talked yesterday a little bit about the different things that you can do with buttercream that I think some people don't even realize. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we have been working with buttercream for years. We acquired specific technique that we use with our buttercream frosting. Most of our designs are really so specific that it's hard for anybody who is not in a cake business to determine, is it a really buttercream or is it fondant-based cake when we do our smooth texture for the cake. We do have an option where we add different texture, like maybe rustic texture, ribbon texture with its most common and very popular texture. But we also add buttercream floral, which one we can color in any colors that would fit the theme of your wedding. So don't stay away from buttercream cakes just because your picture has a fondant-based cake. I can promise you, you will save money, and then plus you're gonna have a very flavorful frosting that you can eat compared to fondant, which one most people don't eat, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're always peeling off the fondant, right? That was one thing that we talked about too. Like you can have flavor in your buttercream, but when you're using fondant, you can have flavor, yes, between the layers, but you can't have any flavor around the outside because that affects the buttercream. So, or not the buttercream, but the fondant. So yeah, and I remember when y'all did that forest theme cake for that bride.
Yes.
And I was like so shocked that the mountains and the trees were made with buttercream.
Absolutely. Yes, we have done with buttercream a lot of different designs. For example, the mountains, trees, you name it. It really takes us a little bit longer if there is a specific design compared to just having a texture on the cake.
Right.
But it looks beautiful. You would not even notice that it's just the buttercream.
Yeah. So I think that what we're saying here is if you want a perfectly smooth cake with a really clean design, or you're going to be outside in the heat, you probably want a fondant, but you're going to pay a little bit more for it. Yeah. Otherwise, buttercream really gives you a lot of options and diversity plus flavor. And so it just really comes down to your personal likes and dislikes.
Absolutely. Your inspiration. That's the most important because we want our brides, to have exactly what they dream of. And that's that.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of couples don't really know what size cake they need for their guest count.
Yeah.
And so there obviously we could go down a whole rabbit hole with this, right? But there's some standard things that we see in the industry, and those sizes are what?
We had most of our wedding cakes, if we're talking about wedding size, let's say 80 people, we would say that the best option would be 6, 8, and 10-inch 3-tier cake, which will feed 80 people. Now, if we go with larger size, for example, 100 guests, I would say 6, 9, and 12 is the most common option. And one thing that I would highly recommend to couples who are planning to take the top tier cake home for the next year anniversary, to keep in mind that it's taking away from the size of the cake. So how many feedings you can have, because each top tier of 6-inch would feed about roughly 10 people. So that's what you're taking away from the entire cake.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, for those couples that are looking at more than 100 guests, they can add things like extra tiers and
Extra.
dessert bars, which we're going to get into in just a second. And I think you told me some other things about like flavors and when their final head counts due.
Yes. So we do have a window of 2 weeks before your event date where you can modify your order. Let's say your guest count is lower than what you estimated at the tasting. We can definitely resize the cake, keep the same design. Or maybe there is another, we had a bride, she came 2 weeks before her event and changed the entire cake. She went to somebody's wedding and she saw this wedding cake and she decided to change her entire order. We can sit and talk about the design and see if there is anything else that needs to be added as far as, invoicing, but it's definitely 2 weeks ahead of time, so we can do modifications here on our end.
Yeah. And one thing that I love too is that when you're talking about tiered cakes, they don't all have to be the same flavor.
Absolutely not. You have a choice for each tier to have their own specific flavor. We do have, I would say, most likely on the low count, about 32 different flavors. You can pretty much create a flavor for each tier the way you like it. So your cake is going to be definitely unique cake, and we have not had ever a same cake with the design and the flavors to match another cake. So you will have your cake that nobody else has.
Yeah.
I guarantee
Custom.
it's a custom. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we're seeing a lot of, I've had couples who either they're like, I don't like cake. I don't know what I want to do, but I just don't even like cake. And of course, I'm like, at least have a small cake for you to cut. But, or we have couples that also, they, a lot of the groom's cakes are kind of going out, wouldn't you say? And so they are doing more, we're seeing more and more dessert bars. So
Yes, lately, what is trending, it's mock cake, just for the picture's sake, and then dessert choices. Dessert choices can be tricky. It really has to be something that can sit out on a room temperature, and that also is the preferred version is a bite size. That way, we can set up your dessert table, and then you don't have to worry about anything else regarding that part of your wedding. So most of couples would definitely go with a sheet cake and then maybe some of the desserts. I would go with a lot of different choices for desserts. That kind of gets messy and confusing for your guests. I would say maybe a sheet cake, mock cake, and then maybe up to 3 different dessert versions for you, bite sizes, and let the guests serve themselves. So that would be the best option.
yeah. And I know that, working the weddings, sometimes we see some pretty messy desserts, and they may be great in theory, but maybe not as
No.
guest friendly. So I think that, you have some great options on y'all's dessert bar that would fit into that. So what do y'all recommend as far as that goes?
We we have a lot of different dessert options, to be honest with you, but when we're asked to recommend, we know that it's not going to change, it's not going to be messed, and it's going to have your flavors and everything that you desired pretty much for that dessert table. We would offer brownies, cake balls. We have cupcake minis. All these flavors of cake balls and cupcake minis, we can bake them and decorate them to match your wedding flavors.
Mm-hmm.
So home style cookies are always great option. We do offer with home style cookies each dozen to have their own flavors, so you can pick if you're ordering 4 dozen of home style cookies, you would have 4 different designs. We can individually wrap them for you. I mean, we had brides where they insist on specific desserts that their grandma used to make. So we had done that too. Churros. We usually don't offer churros, but we did them and they are delicious.
Yeah,
So,
churros are my favorite desserts.
right?
I mean, all desserts pretty much. I'm a sugar queen, but yeah. So you kind of mentioned cookies, and I think that is something that I wanted to bring up. So
Mhm.
as a coordinator here at Messina Inn, we see couples do a lot of favors, and you've heard me mention it before about doing different types of favors other than these traditional things,
Mhm.
that giving them some little tiny chocolate, or giving them some bubbles or something that it's just gonna be
Which
left
is
behind,
collectors.
to be honest
Yes.
with you. And so uh, you and I were talking about doing some edible favors, because those are always a huge hit. Anything that they can take home, even if they don't like it, they have a husband or a kid or a grandkid that would indulge in it. And so I always highly recommend an edible favor as well. And you had some great options for that.
Do we like to offer again something that it doesn't create any mess, that it's easy to transport. So we would say cookies, sugar cookies decorated with their maybe initials.
Mhm.
That would be a best and beautiful way to mark your event. Cake balls again. I wouldn't go with cupcake minis. Definitely bars like brownie bar, pecan bar, that all can be packaged and individually wrapped and sent with your guests. And I mean, those would be the best options, I would say. Macaroons are always beautiful option. Gluten.
Oh, they're so pretty and so
They're
delicious.
so cute,
Um,
and they're so
Basically
cute.
anything that you can like individualize and wrap up and make look pretty, right? And that's why the cupcakes are a little bit harder. Not that you couldn't do
Under,
it, but
yes,
it would just be a little
because
bit
of the
harder.
frosting. That's the only thing.
Hmm.
The frosting
You'd
doesn't
have to
help.
buy the little boxes or something, and it would just
Yes.
be, yeah, a lot. Cool. And you mentioned earlier about keeping the top layer. And so for those who don't know, I mean, I think almost everybody knows, but it's a tradition, a wedding tradition, to keep the top layer of your cake and freeze it and eat it on your 1 year anniversary. Now, some
Mhm.
people think that that is absolutely sounds terrible, but other people still do it. And so there's a couple different things that you guys offer ideas in doing that. So you want to share with us about that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, that tradition is coming back and it's trending. We have more and more couples where they want to mark their anniversary with the exact same wedding cake that they had at their wedding. I think it's a great idea
Mhm.
to celebrate year of being together and doing fun things together for entire year. That's just amazing. And celebrating with a cake that you had done. I feel like everybody should do that, honestly. But anyways, the best practice to keep that cake fresh too for the next year, even though it's going to be in a freezer for entire year, would be if you first take the cake and you freeze in the freezer, and then you wrap the cake with parchment and paper and then aluminum foil. You can go with 1 or 2 layers of aluminum foil. It doesn't matter. Even 1 layer would be fine. And that will preserve your cake to be fresh next year. Definitely. That's the best part.
Yeah. So, so when you say freeze it first, you mean like freeze it for overnight?
Overnight, yes, the entire cake needs to be hardened so you can wrap, so you don't mess up the design.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
pretty to
Yeah.
keep the shape.
And you told me that you had some couples that would even do half of their top layer because they're
Yes.
not going to eat a whole 6-inch cake on their anniversary.
It was a great idea. We were talking about that, and then the groom actually said, "Oh, honey, I am not going to eat 6-inch cake next year. Definitely not. Is there any way we can save half?" I was like, "You can save 1, 2 slices, or a half of it, or entire. It's definitely up to you. That's your call." And he said, "Let's just save half of it." So that would be pretty much like 5 slices of cake, which should be enough for 2 people. So that way you don't take all 10 pieces away from your entire cake. It's a great
Right.
idea.
Yeah. Um, so just to recap that, so a couple things when we're talking about top layer. One is that you can keep the whole top layer or half of it or a couple slices of it, freeze it for about an hour, wrap it in parchment, and then wrap it again
Yes.
in foil. Um, Lucky says Sugar Shaker Bakery is the best. I agree, Lucky.
Thank you.
And then also, or you could also have your bakery recreate your cake a
Yes.
year later. So you don't have to eat that frozen one. You can just recreate one later. That might be a great option if you're moving too, because, trying to keep up with that.
Yes.
And then you mentioned also just to make sure that you're factoring in that top layer. If you're going to save it, you're factoring that in your guest count for your cake, because you don't want 10 people to not be able to get a slice, and you just never know, right? So we've had some weddings, I'm usually the one cutting the cake, so I'm watching how much cake is going out. We've had some wedding where everybody wants cake, and then we've had some wedding where it's like there's still a good portion left. So it just kind of depends. So that is something you should factor in. We also talked about mock cake and sheet cake, and we just kind of briefly went into this. And so I want to talk about that some more because it is something that's really trending. And I personally think it's a great idea.
I just had a conversation about that with parents. They are planning a daughter's wedding in June, and they were talking about possibly having a mock cake. The reason why a lot of what I'm seeing lately, a lot of couples, they're not really into having a cake per se to eat it. They would love to have dessert option, even if it's a donut. So wild donuts or just baked donuts or um, anything else but a cake.
Yeah.
So mock cake would be just for the picture's sake because it's a tradition to have a wedding cake. You know, when you see a wedding, you want to see a wedding cake, bride and then wedding cake. But
You want those pictures of y'all cutting the cake and all.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, mock cake, it's a great option. You can always have a sheet cake. For example, have sheet cake will feed about 50 people. If you go with full sheet, 100 people, there you go. You're still feeding a wedding size 100 guests with one big sheet cake. You're still having a beautiful cake displayed for pictures, and everything. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So a mock cake, for those of you who don't understand, is basically it's a styrofoam cake, but it's decorated on the outside to look just like a regular cake.
Just
And
like a real
so
cake.
you can customize how you want it to look and all that. So the very first time I ever experienced this, I had a bride who wanted, I think it was a 7-tier cake. She had no need for a 7-tier cake, but she wanted that look. And so they created a mock cake for her, with the middle section was the only section that was real, and everything
Yes.
else was fake. And so that's an option too. You can have like one section that's real, or you can have a portion of it that's real so that you can actually cut it, or you can just have the mock cake and have a slice of cake out on the table from your sheet cake. But and then they just served sheet cake from the back. And two things with this, part of the reason I think it's a great idea, right, is cutting a cake is not always the prettiest thing. I'm pretty skilled at it, but it's still not always the prettiest thing. And so there's always crumbs and icing and stuff like that. So if you did a sheet cake, mock cake from the front, sheet cake from the back, nobody's going to see that, right? They
Yes.
just continue to see this beautiful display of everything. But also cost effectiveness is, it's cheaper to do that as
And
well.
that's not the only reason why mock cakes are chosen these days. The weddings, so a lot of weddings are smaller size,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would like to have a picture with a 3-tier cake, but then do you really need 100 people cake? You don't. So you're gonna have a lot of cake left over, which is just wasting your budget that you can use for something else. So
Right.
I would say a lot of times that they have a mock cake is because they love the design, they would love to have a picture, it's their wedding, but they don't need so many slices. So they would have smaller sheet cake in the back to feed everybody with the cake. And maybe keep the mock cake, they can save it, or they can definitely just play with it. It's not waste. It's definitely not. It serves the purpose.
Yeah, that mock cake, you could potentially, if you had it like
Mhm.
white, just a white cake, you could change out the flowers on it and make it look like a totally different cake and use it for another wedding, which would be great. Like if you had sisters or
Absolutely.
something like that that were getting married.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, so there are a couple things that I think um, sometimes people don't think about that y'all do as
Mhm.
bakers. And so you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Yes. So a lot of times when we provide services, we're not only providing services where we're creating your cake, we
Mm-hmm.
also provide several different services. For example, we are in charge of how this cake, let's say for a wedding, we're talking about wedding now, and we're delivering the cake. So we're providing delivery, setting up floral on your cake, making sure that the dessert table looks beautiful, and overall, we don't leave until we know that everything is set up the way that you imagine. So
Mm-hmm.
there are very different ways that setup can be um, very important part. But then there is another way, and we get help a lot from our vendor and venue owners.
Yeah. I think, delivery is a factor, not only just not having to stress about that, but also y'all have like special boxes that y'all deliver these in so that
Absolutely.
they're not moving around in the delivery process. Um, y'all also do tastings as well for your cakes.
Yes, it starts with requesting appointment for the tasting, and that that it's the starting point of having a conversation about your wedding, where it is going to happen, and what flavors would you like to try. We do offer 4 different flavors for the tasting. Definitely you can combine these flavors and create your unique cake. At, um, at, at the appointment, we also try to figure out if there is something that we definitely need to know regarding your budget and specific design. And I would always recommend tasting before any cake has been chosen or booked. Tasting is very important.
It is, because here's the thing, like, and I'm sure you know this being in the industry, but I have seen a lot of cakes that they look good or they taste good, but sometimes it can be kind of uncommon to find it to be both.
Yes,
And
you're
that's one of the reasons why we have selected you guys. There's only about 2 or 3 bakeries out of
thank
all the
you.
bakeries that I know of in Austin area, like you guys and a couple others that can execute both flavor and
Thank you.
design.
We're looking at every order not as a one-time customer. We want our customers to keep coming back. So we work really hard to provide the best flavors and perfect design because we want our customers to feel like a family. So that's the main goal of our bakery,
Right.
to keep family oriented.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we were just going to mention too some of the most common disasters that we hear about. And I asked you this, and I was a little bit surprised by your answer. So I think that you should share that.
Yes, there was, and it's really sad. We felt sad for this bride that the bakery that they scheduled and booked their cake, paid deposit, canceled their order not even a week before their wedding. Um, we like to book our weddings at least months in advance, but in this case, we we just took that order. We felt sorry for the bride because that is not acceptable, and that's the worst thing that we ever heard. So to cancel your wedding cake week before your wedding.
Yeah. And
So
it's not uncommon in the industry if you don't get a true professional. And that is one of the things that you're going to hear throughout my series if you're watching all my videos is professionals, professionals, professionals. And that is one of the reasons why. If you book somebody who's a home baker and her kid gets sick, there's nobody to bake your cake.
absolutely not. They will cancel. Miss, not everybody, but they have no choice. We have to understand them too. If there is just one baker, one decorator, which is themselves and they're sick or their child is sick, I mean, priorities is family and life, and they have to do what they have to do. We totally get that. When you're booking with a bakery, we have several decorators. I have 4 decorators. I have 2 bakers, managers. So there is a team of people that canceling an order is not an option.
Right.
It's definitely not an option.
Yeah. Yeah, so we just want to reiterate using a professional, somebody with reviews, read reviews because if they have, I
Yes,
mean, they have bad reviews consistently. I mean, everybody's going to get a bad apple here and there, but you know, if they have consistent good reviews and they're a true bakery, they shouldn't be. They should know how to cut your straws correctly. They should be able to fulfill your order and be able to deliver it properly and all of those things. So those are the things that I think are key when you're booking this type of cake
yes,
for wedding day because it's such an
absolutely.
important day and it it's not like I can make the cake later, you know. So, is there anything else that you can think that you want to share with our brides
Um,
today, Rhoda?
I think we talked about everything. I'm not sure if there should be anything else. I'm thinking about maybe questions that the brides have, but I think we talk about the size, the design, tasting, setup, and delivery. I don't think there is anything else. They can definitely reach out to us or to you if there is any more questions that they might have. Um,
So,
but
Rhoda, what's your favorite flavor combination?
my favorite flavor is very vanilla, just because I'm vanilla fan since I was a little kid. If I eat ice cream, it's vanilla. So berry vanilla is vanilla cupcake with vanilla buttercream. And of course, it's filled with vanilla mousse. So it's the triple vanilla. You can't lose with that if you're a vanilla fan.
Yeah. I think my favorite for you guys is going to be the champagne cake with
Oh,
the
pink
strawberry
champagne.
filling.
Oh my God. That flavor last year actually was a top-notch flavor. And I don't think we had one wedding cake that at least one of the tier is not being pink champagne. So it is definitely beautiful, flavorful flavor that I don't know that anybody don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just it's good. It's my favorite. So,
Thank you.
well, thank you so much for jumping on with me, Rhoda. And I
You're
hope that
welcome.
everybody watching today got some helpful things for them while they're planning in the planning process. Next week, we're going to be talking about catering and bar. So that is the goal for next week. If y'all have any questions for that, please send them over. And don't forget to comment hashtag live if you're watching live with us today. Hashtag replay if you're watching later. Make sure to follow both Sugar Shaker and Messina if you're, wanting to keep up with our businesses. And thank you so much for joining us all today.
Thank you, Cherie, for having me. We love you guys. We love all our customers, and you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.